All right. So first off, thanks for having me. Um, really love being part of a community and be able to share a little bit about the work that I do. So I'm a death doula. I'm an intuitive grief guide. I'm a ritualist. I teach yoga, Reiki, and all these other really fun and exciting things. But what I found is my world has kind of pared down to where I just talk about death and I just talk about grief. So I'm super fun at all the parties. Um, but my hope is that by talking about these things more openly, we normalize how we approach death, dying, and grief. We're not taught how to die, and we're not taught how to grieve. So when these moments show up in our lives, they can be super impactful, and there's a lot of potency in those moments if we can shift towards maybe welcoming them in a different way, because they're going to be part of our lives. We're all going to die, so that's a spoiler alert if you didn't know. And we're all going to be touched by death and grief at some point. So being able to show up to those parts of our lives more fully and with potency allows us to not find meaning necessarily, but allows us just to be present. Because what I want to stress today is ritual is not about finding meaning in it, right? Sometimes that can be a result of, but sometimes just showing up is the hardest thing we'll do. So when I teach fitness classes, that's the one thing I always stress. The hardest thing you do is show up. When you walk through the door or when you show up to the ritual that you're creating for yourself, that's the hardest part. Anything that happens after that is going to be magic. So today when we start to build, we're going to build a ritual together as we walk through this today. Everything's welcome. Any emotion that starts to come up is welcome. If you have to stand up or move or step outside, all of that's welcome, right? I'll be around too afterwards for questions. But one of the things I want to start with is just like to show up together. So just place your hand on your heart for a second. Let's just take some breaths together. So even if you're at home watching, just place your hand on your heart. Let's just all show up for a second. Right? Just feel the rise and the fall of your chest beneath your hand. It's a very ordinary, very sacred thing that we constantly do that your body just knows how to do. Just tune into that for a second. Just feel the beating heart beneath your hand. Just show up fully to this moment, this ordinary, simple moment. Just take a deep breath in together. Let it go. Deep breath in. Let it go. One more. Deep breath in. You can take your hand off your heart if you want, or leave it there. And one of the things that I love about the poem Mindful by Mary Oliver is it talks about the holy ordinary. And that's where ritual for me is the most potent. Now I've been to some really elaborate rituals where 2 or 3 hours long, a day long, and there's chimes and there's bells and we're doing all the really cool and amazing fun things. But I've also had very potent, powerful rituals where all we had was a birthday candle. And we lit the candle to something. And we all showed up. Ritual is like birthdays, right? Funerals, those are all rituals. But there's all this stuff that happens in between. So grief, joy, death, love are all these very human things that we experience. And for me, ritual is showing up to the most human parts of our story. Because that's all we're living right now is this big story. And we're kind of in this season where we're acknowledging and celebrating the resurrection, right? So this is a resurrection story. But for me, the potency of that story is not the resurrection, but the human moments of Christ before we get there. There's the fear in the garden. There's the doubt. There's the aloneness. There's all these very human parts of that story that we kind of move through very quickly to get to the end, right? Which is sometimes what we want to do. Like, we're going through it, like we just want to get to that other place. But ritual is that place where we can invite ourselves into the story. So I'm going to read up another poem by Mary Oliver. It kind of speaks to that before the resurrection. It kind of talks a little bit about what ritual is for me. And it's called Gethsemane. The grass never sleeps, or the roses, nor does the lily have a secret eye that shuts until morning. Jesus said, "Wait with me." But the disciples slept. The cricket has such splendid fringe on its feet, and it sings, have you noticed, with its whole body? And heaven knows if it ever sleeps. Jesus said, "Wait with me." And maybe the stars did. Maybe the wind wound itself into a silver tree and didn't move. Maybe the lake far away where once he walked on a blue pavement, lay still and waited, wild, awake. Oh, the dear body, slumped and eyes shut, that could not keep that vigil. How they must have wept, so utterly human, knowing this too must be part of the story. So to me, that speaks to like the humanness of these very deep moments we'll go through. And I think, I often wonder, like, if we celebrated our grief like a birthday, how we'd change our relationship to grief. Or if we changed our perspective around these bigger moments that do show up, how that can change how we move through them. And there's the 5 stages of grief, but for me, it's a very nonlinear process, right? Grief isn't this linear thing that we walk through. It's something that we move through, we shift through. Death isn't just something that happens at the funeral, right? It's all that walking up to that point. And it's the after, right? The years after, we're still remembering the person you've lost, or the animal you've lost, or the moments you've lost in your life. So celebrating these moments with ritual just allows us to be present. And it becomes a doorway. I look at grief as like a landscape, death as a landscape, and we all walk these landscapes. And the landscape is just big, it's vast. So when you're standing in the landscape, it can be whatever it needs to be for you at that moment. And in that landscape, we can tend. So if you've ever put your hands in soil, the smell, and soil is all this decayed, dead stuff that creates new life, right? So all of these experiences that we go through in our lives are just soil, right? From the moment we're born, we begin to die. It's a very natural process. What if grief is an enzyme? It's just a natural part of this process of being human. And through ritual, we can celebrate these things. So when I teach about ritual, I don't teach prescriptive rituals because, again, it's not a recipe that you can follow. There are tons of books, and anytime I try to follow a script like I have here, I completely go off script. So if it starts to turn nighttime, let me know so we can wrap it up, because I can talk forever about this stuff. But what we're going to do today is I will go through some parts that I feel are the most important about ritual. And again, it's not prescriptive, but it's something that we're going to build through together today so that we can kind of experience it. You can talk about ritual until you're blue in the face, or you can do ritual and feel and take the parts that work for you and leave the rest to just become soil. So for me, simplicity, invitation, intention, embodiment, and then release. So simplicity, invitation, intention, embodiment, and release. So simplicity starts just by showing up, right? You can get as elaborate as you want. So you can have all the sage, you can do the Palo Santo, you can have the stones that you need. But for me, it's just showing up to what you have. And oftentimes you get asked, well, what about setting the space? So what if just you being there is cleansing enough? What if your breath is all you need to cleanse a space? What if you pluck just a strand of grass and that's all you need to cleanse a space? How simple can you make the ritual? The more steps there are to something, the less likely we are to do it, right? So if you pull out a script and there's like 15 different things, it becomes harder to do. So when I teach fitness classes, we try to make them simple, because the more complex something is, the less likely we are to do it. So keep your rituals as simple as you can. And when we're in these big moments of grief and doubt and fear, we may not have the capacity to collect all the things we think we need, right? Sometimes all we can do is just show up. And that's all you need, ever, is to just show up. And then the invitation is just inviting in whatever it is you want. Holy beings, just yourself, the sacred moment, those that you're sharing the experience with. Like today, we're just going to invite each other in. So just kind of look around the room for a second. Just acknowledge each other, right? We live in a world where we're constantly just moving around, and we barely make eye contact, right? Which means we barely make heart contact with each other. Place your hands on your heart again and just feel that, right? So those of you at home we may not be able to look at directly, we can all touch our hearts together for a moment. Just leave them here for a second. And just feel that thing that connects all of us. Sharing this holy moment together. And this is what makes it holy. This is what makes it cleansed. It's just the fact that we're here. And how powerful is that, just to be in a space together? And even if you're just at home alone, how holy it is to just be in a space where you can touch your heart, to feel the rise and the fall of your chest, to feel your feet or your body as supported by the earth, the expanse of sky, the nourishment of breath. All of it just kind of moving through at this moment. So close your eyes for a second. Let's invite in everything, all parts of yourself. Leave nothing behind in this moment. Take those deep breaths. Let yourself be holy. Let yourself be enough. What if you're enough just as you are? And as we begin this ritual of tending these places inside of ourselves, what if all we have right now is enough? Can you breathe into that for a moment? Can we let this be the ritual of enough? Can we celebrate that for just a second? And I'm going to do a small invocation that I use from one of my teachers, T. Thorne Coyle. Holy Mother, in whom we live, move, and have our being, from you all things emerge, and unto you all things return. Open our hearts this blessed day. Touch our bodies and our minds. Walk with us through the gates of power, in shadow and starlight, in fire meeting earth, in wind on the ocean, and the sweet kiss of life. Blessed be our journey. So open your eyes for a second. So now we've invited in, right? It can be whatever you want, right? The holy emptiness, the holy beauty of the moment. What if our affirmation and prayer isn't necessarily just thank you, but if it's I don't know? Maybe that's my prayer today. Maybe my prayer is help me, right? Maybe my prayer is silence, because I just don't know what to ask for. So intention is where we start to make these asks of whatever we're reaching out to or reaching into, right? So place your hands on your heart again. Bring them back to center. And as we begin tending and as we begin inviting in all of this beauty and all this enoughness, what in your heart right now needs tending? What in your body needs tending? Is there an emotion or a sensation? Are you experiencing grief or loss in this moment? What if you bring your other hand to meet your hand across the heart and just hold yourself for a second? What in you needs tending? Maybe your joy needs tending. Maybe your heart needs tending. Maybe the physical parts of yourself need tending in this moment. Maybe you don't know, and that's okay too. Maybe it's enjoying just sitting in the chair and enjoying the music today. Maybe that's what we're tending together. Let's just take a deep breath into those places inside of us that need tending. Deep breath in. Let it go. Take those deep sighing releases. Deep breath in. Let it go. Deep breath in. Let it go. Open your eyes. Come back into the space for a second. And each part of this is a ritual in and of itself, right? All of this is ritual. All these little parts and pieces. And again, you can make these things as elaborate or as simple as you need them to be for yourself going forward. So now the next piece is embodiment. So embodiment is where we start to feed the thing inside of us that needs our attention at this moment. We give it a little bit of energy. So we're going to raise a little bit of energy together. So again, this time place your hand across your tummy. I'm going to move the mic so there's less feedback. This is about to get a little loud. So hand across your tummy and hand across your heart. Just kind of hold yourself for a second. Take that deep belly breath. Now here's what we're going to do. 3 times together, we're going to intone the word love. Doesn't matter if you're like the greatest singer or like me, the worst singer in the world, right? We're just going to intone the word love. Maybe it's the word love. Maybe it's a sound for you that represents love. And we're going to do that 3 times together. All right, here we go. Deep breath in. Love. Deep breath in. Louder. Love. Deep breath in. Even louder. Love. With that energy we just raised and built, let yourself be fed by love. Let the parts parts of you that are calling for something more. Be fed by love. And as we feed each other, we are also fed. So can you just breathe into that for just a moment? Let yourself be fed by love. And whatever it is, and maybe you don't quite know what it is, so just take some with you. Take a little bit with you as you go. I think I'm like... Go up instead of down. Okay, here we go. So that's embodiment. Embodiment means we bring it into the body, we bring it into the space. So now we fed the parts of ourselves with some love. We've given some love. Yeah, I think I...
Just use this one.
Is it okay? Here we try it. That's all right. It's all part of the ritual, right? Everything we do...
Sounds like a ritual.
Well, everything we do becomes part of the ritual. So here's another thing, right? You can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So if a baby cries, if you cry, right? If something falls off the shelf, if you fall off the shelf, right? All of it. If you fall asleep during meditation, it's part of the meditation, right? There's absolutely no way to get any of this stuff wrong, which is why I don't like to do prescriptive meditations, because if you miss a step, you're like, oh, you got to do the whole thing over again, you know? And it's not so. You don't have to do the whole thing over again. Just showing up is enough. Keep it simple. Invite in whatever you want to invite in. Embody it, just for a moment. And if you don't know what to embody, you can embody silence. You can embody rest. We're not taught how to rest either. So ritual can be a moment of rest. Meditation can last one breath or hours. And there's always that debate of how long. If you can make it for one breath, that's great, right? That's all you need. Maybe your ritual is just a breath. A fully conscious inhale where you touch your heart and you feel the rise and the fall of your body. Maybe that's enough, right? And I want you to think as you go forward, like, what's your enough, right? And if you like it to be elaborate and fancy, make it that, right? But my challenge is, how can we make it simple, right? Maybe it's having a meal with a friend. Maybe that's your ritual, right? Where can you show up more fully to the rituals in your life? Like Beth mentioned before, we have these rituals and these things that we do. Where can you show up with maybe a little bit more intention to those things that sometimes can become rote, right? How can you make brushing your teeth a holy act, right? How you can make paying your bills something holy, right? It's the challenging stuff that is the biggest invitation to those holiest moments, right? Because they're the most human moments of our story. Celebration is beautiful. Celebration is wonderful. But there are moments when we may feel like we're lost in the landscape, and a ritual is just us putting a landmark. It's just us saying, I'm here and I'm able and willing to take that next step. So your ritual is where we just show up a little bit together. And then release is just letting it go, right? Walking away, turning the candle off, putting out the incense. Going on to that next thing, right? You brush your teeth, you go into your day, right? So what if showing up every day to your shower or to your toothbrush is like your active ritual? It's where you cleanse and you release and you just show up to the day in the holiest way you can. Not as an act of perfection, but as an act of just showing up, right? Because perfection is great, but it's like, you know, an aspiration. So I always go back to that scene in the garden, right? Where this person we're looking at as perfect is the most human, right? And for me, those are the most transformative parts of that story. So I want you to think moving forward, like, what are the most transformative parts of your story, and how can you celebrate yourself in those moments going forward, right? So take that today, and if nothing else, the next time something a little heavier shows up, because it will, take time just to breathe into it. Maybe just place your hand on your heart and just say, I'm here and I'm enough, right? And then anything after that is going to be beautiful, right? So that's pretty much all I have. So thank you. If you have questions, email me, michael@michaelbrazell.com. I am here local. If you're going through some stuff and just need someone to remind you to breathe, I'm really good at that, teaching yoga. I tell people to breathe all day long. I love it. I'll tell you to move. And if you just need to figure out how to create rituals for yourself, let me know. I can always help you do that too. But I'll be around after. If you have any questions or anything, just ask. But, yeah, michaelbrazell.com, and my blog is death.yoga. So pretty simple. Yeah, Michael, MichaelBrazell.com. Yeah.
Are you on Facebook or Instagram?
Yes, I am on Facebook. So Facebook, I am M. Brazell. I do deactivate my Facebook pretty regularly. I do. It's more for like, I want to create community, but I also, like, part of my ritual is leaving and going into the wilderness a bit to come back and bring some new stuff back to my blogs. And so if, like, you follow me and I disappear, I didn't unfollow you, I didn't block you. It's just like I need to disappear to bring some cool stuff back. So, yeah. But thank you so much. I appreciate you letting me be part of this experience, you guys.